I think most of you were there as part of the panel discussion where we just discussed about, jobs versus entrepreneurship, what's happening today, etc. So what I'll largely do is just run you through the Startup India initiative. What is it all about? How is it that we're helping startups? How is it that we're helping entrepreneurs, etc. And then happy to take on any questions. So just to talk about technological disruption, and I think you guys have already heard a lot about it, but just some interesting facts. In 2007, drones used to cost $100,000, but because of this technological leapfrogging that is happening today across the world, we've come down to almost $550. Here, as part of this slide, two very interesting facts. First, about mobile phones. There were applications which were worth $900,000 in 1980, something like a video camera, something like a torch. If you combine almost like 12 or 13 of these applications, they used to cost $900,000, but today they're available for free as part of your phone. DNA sequencing has taken a huge jump. In 2000, it used to cost about $2.7 billion per unit. Today, the per unit cost has actually come down to $1,000. 67 years was the average age of a S&P 500 company, which has actually gone down to 15 years. And 88% of these companies have disappeared between the 1950s and then 2016. So, do you see how technology is actually changing? It's disrupting industries. It's, disrupting companies today. And these large companies also are disappearing if you think about it. So, just an example here, if I'm sure all of you would have heard of Kodak, the camera company, right? It used to be almost worth $30 billion back in the 2000s. Today, it's no longer existent. So that's because they probably did not look at how they would sort of innovate going forward. And, the company is almost negligible today. So it's important to always keep in mind how technology is, advancing the way we're moving. Next slide. Another interesting fact here is that if you look at startups versus large corporations, technology acceleration has actually decreased way over time. So somebody like an AT&T actually took 65 years to become $1 billion company, but if you look at a Zomato, it only reached in about 7 years. Infosys took like 22 years to become $1 billion company, but like an Ola did it in 3 years. So just some facts for you guys that how startups are actually accelerating value creation in the world. Giving you an overview of the Indian startup ecosystem. As you all know, we're a young nation. Almost 70% of our entrepreneurs today are less than 35 years of age. In the valley also, 40% of the co-founders are actually Indian. We have 7 million college graduates, 4,000 of you guys, and another couple of million. So it's really important that how do we sort of create jobs rather than you guys becoming job seekers. I think a lot of people have spoken about it. What's really interesting as part of this slide is that there was a Youth of Nation survey conducted, almost like 150,000 people were surveyed, where 55% of the youth in the country today feels that they want to be part of startups and not large corporates. So we see that as like a game changer today in the country. We're the second largest startup ecosystem in the world today. Mapped you some of the major hubs today in the country with some of upcoming ones. Hyderabad now has become major. If you look at data over the last 2 years, Hyderabad was actually non-existent, really. And it was one of the upcoming hubs, but you guys have done a quantum leapfrogging in the last 2 years. We're currently valued at about $50 billion, approximate valuation of the startup ecosystem today. The funding since January 2016 has been about $9.5 billion. Actually, this number has gone up. This is for a year and a half till the first half of this year. One fact that I'd want to highlight here is that we're only 9% women entrepreneurs, even though we've seen a quantum jump over the last 12 months. However, we really want this number to grow. We're looking at different incentives that we can provide to women so that they can really enter into the whole becoming startup co-founders, etc. So this is something from a national level we're very, very concerned about. 700, another interesting number, 700 plus startups are actually arising out of unicorns. What this means is that people who were part of the Flipkarts and the large unicorns in India, 700 of them have actually left those startups and started their own companies. So an interesting fact here. Talking about the opportunity in India really, and we see that as a huge opportunity. These are some of the top funded sectors for 2017. Fintech has taken a huge jump. That's typically because of demonetization as an exercise plus GST rolling out, etc. Followed by e-commerce, which has been a boom from a funding perspective over the last 2 years. Followed by transport, logistics, and healthcare. So these are, just some of the top 5 sectors where we've seen money flowing from VCs, from angel networks. However, from a country perspective, we really feel that these are some of the 5 sectors which are going to change the way the country is today. Agri-tech being the largest, yes, because it's supporting 60% of India's population, followed by logistics, artificial intelligence. So, a lot of people actually get confused by this slide. So as Startup India, it's not that these sectors are given any preference. Everyone's given a level playing field. It's just that these are some of the sectors that we feel are sunrise sectors, which will, change the way the world is functioning. So, again, we are the second largest consumer internet market. Google recently took out some analytics which actually said that we are the largest Android user market in the world. We have the largest downloads on the Google Play Store. In terms of the internet market, what's interesting about this graph, and that's how I read it, is that the first 100 million users in the country took 3 years to reach the internet. The next 100 million actually took just 1 year, and the subsequent 100 million, so the third 100 million user, actually reached in about 9 months. So we're seeing that internet is actually penetrating into the country. So this is one of the key metric for a startup to actually have internet connectivity across. Interesting slide, a lot of data here, so I'll just explain to you very simply what we're trying to say. What we're trying to say today is that 90% of startups are only solving 10% of India's problems. The real problems today actually lie in the bottom of the pyramid, which is about 86% of the population. There is something they call the India Stack, which is basically APIs that you can embed as part of your startup, which give you access to the 1.2 billion users in the country. And I'll talk more about it in the next slide. But most of the startups that we interact with at Startup India today are part of the movers and the shakers in the urban middle, which are, focused very much on, say, about 10% of the population. So I urge you guys to look at, the bottom of the pyramid. The real problem for us is, waste management, water management, and things like that, agriculture, plastics, and that's something that we really need to solve for India. India Stack, as I told you, these are some of the 5 APIs that are available for free. It's a simple application form that you need to fill up. Aadhaar, eKYC, UPI, DigiLocker, and eSign. You guys can go read about it, and I'm sure Aadhaar, you guys know about it. We are the only country in the world which has 1 billion biometrics, and because of that, data is so easy to capture. A lot of countries are now looking to integrate Aadhaar as part of their immigration system to track Indians. So, the power of Aadhaar has really gone up over the last couple of months, and that's Jio was one such example which successfully implemented Aadhaar, and that's how it penetrated into that local market. Talking about Startup India, and just spend some time here. So we launched the Startup India action plan about 1.5 years back, and the focus really has been on hand-holding startups, making mechanisms as easy as possible. Today, for you to register a startup, the forms have actually gone down from 60 forms to only 3 forms. You can get yourself approved under Startup India within 24 hours. There's an online application form available on the website. So these are some of the criterias which are applicable for you to register as a startup. You need to be less than 7 years of age. Most of you guys, I'm sure, would just be starting, or probably would have started just over the last 1 or 2 years. You need to be a private limited, a registered partnership, or a limited liability company. Your turnover should not be more than 25 crores. and you should not split up your entity in terms of being an existing company who either is over 7 years or has 25 crores over revenue. So that's something we don't recommend. And you need to self-certify that you're either innovative in nature, you're disrupting an existing process, or you're creating wealth in the country or creating employment. So it's as simple as that. A simple form gets you registered under Startup India within 24 hours. And these are some of the benefits that you actually get. The fund of funds being the biggest. So there is a 10,000 crore fund of fund managed by SIDBI, which is basically 17 VCs impaneled, which help, which actually accelerating the whole funding mechanism into the country. IPR support, again, another interesting benefit that you get here. So today it costs about 50,000 rupees to file a patent, but if you registered under Startup India, you get an 80% rebate to do so. There is self-certification of legal laws and environment laws. So typically for manufacturing startup, it's quite a boon. You can shut down your company within 90 days. So we've got a quick exit advisory on that. There are a host of competitions, etc., that are hosted on almost on a weekly or a monthly basis. So, to basically give you access to this information, we launched the Startup India Hub, which is going to be the one-stop shop for the startup ecosystem going forward. So it gives you access to incubators, accelerators, if you're looking for a mentor in a specific sector, looking for funding in a specific sector. So it gives you all that information, and I'll talk more in detail once the slide comes up. After Startup India, actually, most of the states have sort of set up policies. We're still expecting some of the other states. So, 11 have set up state startup policies over the last 1.5 years, and about 5 states having. So we've got about 16, 17 states today in India which have startup policies. As part of the call center, the Startup India actually runs a call center, which is either you can call, there's an email query, and then we've got a Twitter seva. Most of the queries come from the call center. We've handled almost like 62,000 queries. And most of these questions were, almost like I'd say 2/3 of these questions were from people in tier 2 and 3 cities who said, I have an idea and I don't know where to go. I'm looking for a mentor. I'm looking for an investor. I want to validate my idea. How do I take it forward? These are some of the analytics. We've got the top 5 states from which queries are coming are actually Maharashtra, Delhi, UP, Karnataka, and Haryana. And 74% of these queries are actually from businessmen or from working professionals who are either looking to start at their own startup or who are looking to, change their field, etc., looking to get government benefits. Because of these queries, we actually set up a Startup India learning program. We set this up 3 months back. It's a free of cost 4-week online program that basically provides you with the basic modules from an idea stage to a business plan stage. That's where it takes you from. So I urge you guys to look it up. There's a short video which will explain about the program. So I think it's going to be a fantastic program for at least all of you sitting here in the room. I think your college might be imbibing this program as part of their curriculum going forward, maybe from next year. But the guys who are very, very eager, please go up to the Startup India platform and register for the program. So these are some of the facilitations that we've typically done. So we handhold startups, take them from point A to point B. If you're looking for funding, who is the right person? If you're looking to create a business plan, what's the right way to create a business plan? So we've got an offline team that sort of handholds startups. And these are some of the interesting examples that we have. The one in the center was raised by a car mechanic from Madhya Pradesh who claimed that he built a car which can run on water. So he had a simple prototype. We connected him to a university near his hometown. He's recently received funding from the government and he's working on his foolproof prototype. So interesting example, Ather Energy, I'm sure most of you would have heard on it, one of the leading electric two-wheeler manufacturers in India. And when Ather Energy came to us about a year back, they said, we don't know how do we set up charging infrastructure in the country. So we're now coming up with a charging infrastructure policy by the Ministry of Heavy Industries that's coming up. There was funding assistance given to this startup. So these are some of the examples in terms of how we help startups. The Startup India Hub, and I think I'd like to invite Ronak to sort of talk about it after the video, which basically is that one-stop shop for anyone in the startup ecosystem. So in case you guys have any issues registering on the portal, Ronak's here to help you guys out. And go check it out. The Learning and Development Program is also there. There are a host of freebies that are available for startups, something like crowd credits worth $1,000 by Amazon, etc. So there are legal services which are free. So I think you guys should definitely check it out. And before I close, just an interesting slide and just some food for thought. So the fastest billion users was actually by an Indian corporation and not by the Facebooks and the YouTubes of the world. So it was Aadhaar who actually took 5.5 years. The closest was WhatsApp that actually took 6.5 years. So we believe that the potential lies here in our country. I spoke to you about the opportunity, and I urge you guys to become entrepreneurs. In case you guys have any questions, the Startup India team is an honest facilitator. We are with you. We are happy to help with any sort of questions that you may have. Thank you, guys.